I'm a doctoral candidate, and I'm writing my dissertation currently. My dissertation is on eBooks as instructional tools pre-K through grades 2. So I've been involved in research for since about 2009, and I, had to do my comps and all of the stuff that goes along with your doctorate, and I did good. I did well, excuse me.
I done good.
I done good. But
they can take it away. So.
Yeah. But really what I'm trying to answer, or what we're talking about, is this big question, Can ebooks of reasonably good quality help children learn to read? And I think that from an educator standpoint, that's what I've been asking for the last number of years, and that's what I'm trying to find out. And as a researcher, and as a parent, and as a teacher, what I have to tell you is that despite their popularity, there's a lack of evidence literature still to explain the extent which electronic books can support children's emergent literacy. So they're out there, and you can look through the iTunes store. You can see how many are available, but we just don't have enough research to really strongly support them. And I think that Junko said that when we were Skyping with her. There needs to be more research here. So really where we're at right now is that research is in its infancy. Much of it is lab-based research, and there's not much applied research at all. The positive thing from that is that there are pockets of people that are working on this and are looking at it. And so what I've been trying to do is meet those people and begin conversations and try to develop a stronger network of people like myself, like Warren, like Junko, that are interested in growing this research base, because it's very much needed, and it will help all of you that are trying to develop these apps, I think, and products for young kids. So, what do we know? Well, this is the lit review, so this is going to be a snoozer, and if you want me to go more quickly, just give me the, well, no. What we know really stems from what we know about using technology with young kids, and I'll have to go to the NAEYC and Fred Rogers Joint Position Statement to begin this. Are most of you familiar with the Joint Position Statement? Yeah, there you go. The statement that they released in 2011 offers some guidance based on research-based knowledge about how young children learn and how they grow, on both the opportunities and challenges of using technology and interactive media, right? And that statement is a good one, and it is based on research, which makes me happy, but here's essentially what they say. When used intentionally and appropriate, technology and interactive media are effective tools to support learning and development. Pretty broad statement, but it's quite a step from where I think where NAEYC had been prior to this statement.
Yeah.
So this was a tremendous step forward when this came out, and they started looking at it. And now I think at least using technology with young children is getting a little bit more support and encouragement, and from both of those organizations. Because of that, Head Starts, child care centers, and places like that now feel a little more comfortable bringing technology, whatever you might want to say, stuff you plug into those classrooms. What I've found is that Head Start teachers, preschool teachers, just aren't as highly trained and highly skilled as they probably need to be to use it effectively yet. So there's a great need for professional development and professional learning opportunities for preschool teachers.
I will say, TCEA does a special tech conference just for early childhood.
Okay.
And that's the only one that I know of in the nation that they center just on under 4-year-olds. They don't even go up to 8, which is the typical NAEYC.
Mm-hmm.
And they hold that annually.
TCEA is, okay.
TCEA, Texas Computer Education Association.
Okay.
They call it Young Tots. I think Tots and Tech. What?
Someone's trying to Skype me. Anyways, here's what we know, and I'm not going to read this. This is in the ebook. You can read it yourself. But here's where NAEYC and Fred Rogers got some of their stuff. That there's these different affordances that educational technology bring to young children. And I've separated them into 2 different strands. Basically, literacy affordances. So research has shown that computer-based learning activities and language activities can induce greater collaboration, that multimedia seems to help children create mental models, Using computer software seems to benefit special populations like English language learners or English as second language learners, and that computers and technology can motivate kids to read and write. So we know this just about technology in general based on all of these studies and really the research pioneers. They also offer social affordances. Technology also offers social affordances. So when we're looking at technology from an early childhood standpoint, I'm looking at how can it help in a literacy perspective and how can it help kids socially. And there is research to show that you know what, using computers and technology with kids isn't going to make them socially backwards, or isn't going to make them only concentrate on the screen and they're going to stop playing. You know, what we actually find is that I like the last one. Manipulating shapes and symbols on screen represents a new form of play, symbolic play, and that children teach digital artifacts as concretely as they do physical artifacts. And I think that's really important. We talked about it yesterday, and at one point we were kind of talking about the interaction of kids and how they play, and I just think it's really interesting that kids don't make a distinction between cup here and cup that they might move. They can play with a cup, whether it's on the screen or whether they have it right in front of them. And we see this, and I actually see it in my own kids when they use apps like Toontastic or Cartoonatic or Puppet Pals, where they do the very same type of play and do puppet shows right on that screen as they do when we make paper bag puppets in the basement at my house and put on our puppet shows. They treat it very much the same. So that is very interesting and encouraging to me, and I can show you, if we have time, some of the digital play things that I'm trying to do with my own children to raise awareness and to begin to educate not only teachers but parents about how they can merge traditional play activities with digital play. So let's talk specifically about what we know about ebooks or children's ebooks. To build literacy, to build literary, expository, and foundational reading skills described in the Common Core, what we know is that young kids are going to need book experience to help them read words with sufficient accuracy and speed to comprehend texts well by the end of 3rd grade. That's what Common Core is saying. They need to read with speed and accuracy, they need to be able to comprehend, and this will be accomplished by the end of the 3rd grade. Because, you know, reading is always done and is accomplished by the end of a grade level. That was a joke.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ward. No, but anyways. But that's kind of the truth of the Common Core. But equally important, I think, here is that we know that children need to want to read. All right. So in Common Core, they leave out that love of reading, but we know that they need to. So ebooks then, as a curricular resource, should support, if not advance, those goals. And that's what and that's what I'm looking for in good ebooks. In a broad overview, there's these 2 theoretical perspectives that kind of provide momentum concerning the use of ebooks, and what we find in the literature is that they may support reading engagement. And on the other hand, they support scaffolding for emergent literacy. So when you get into the research and take a deep dive, these are the 2 main themes that keep running through and through. We know that the ebooks offer an engaging medium for struggling readers. They're fairly easy to implement for classroom teachers, and they provide opportunities for individual practice for all students. So kids like them. They like to pick up the iPad. They like to open up a book, and they are engaged in the literacy experience. We also have ebooks that help young children that normally wouldn't be able to read on their own read. These are primarily, we're talking about, again, ELLs, children with disabilities. Ebooks enable them to independently explore text. Something that they might not have been able to do with a print book, right? You could give them the print book and they might not be able to interact with it, but when you give them the ebook, there's different opportunities in there to engage them in the text. Specifically about reading engagement, there are a number of studies that highlight benefits of ebooks on reading engagement when we compare them to traditional books. Some of the pioneers here are De Jong and Buss. They have a 2002 and another 2003 study. Talley, Lancey, and Lee. These people all suggest that ebooks may offer increased interactive opportunities to promote child engagement thus increasing child outcomes. So those are some of the foundational studies available in reading engagement. In another study in 2007, Moody found that there's significantly higher levels of persistence favoring ebooks over traditional books when she measured reading engagement in 3 to 6-year-old children from economically disadvantaged homes. So Moody is another one that's been looking at ebooks quite expansively, and she found that young kids really prefer that ebook over the traditional book. Am I going too fast? Questions so far?
Perfect.
I'm trying to get through the lit reviews. I'm sorry.
No, it's
I feel like I'm defending my comps again. So reading engagement was the one theoretical perspective. Scaffolding is the other. And there's numerous theories of reading development that recommend scaffolding. These are theories that came from traditional book research, not specifically ebook, but we know that scaffolding helps kids learn to read, right? Specifically, what can ebooks, what kind of supports do they provide? Well, they provide digital scaffolding supports. McKenna has done a lot of work in this area. They also provide word pronunciation tools to assist students with phonological awareness and the decoding of text. And then there's these picture cues and read aloud options that help enhance comprehension. So these are all of the type of scaffolds and supports that I'm looking for as a teacher when I open up your ebook. So, and we've seen some of these throughout the different demos that we've looked at, whether they're apps that you've shared or ones that Warren knew from the contest. But we see these again and again, and I've actually done my own research where I've taken a corpus of ebooks and I've gone into them and I've looked specifically for these type of scaffolds, and I've counted them and tracked them, and I actually started with Mark's Living Books. So back in 2008, I developed a thing called the Blueprint Key, where I would take screenshots of his living books and I would put a little code. Is this interactive audio, or is this video, or is this a word that illustrates? And boy, that was a lot of fun. Let me tell you, 2008 was a great year with the Blueprint Key. But at that point in time, it was really important to try to understand what makes these ebooks tick and how are they different. So it's still good data to have. I like to poke fun at myself, but we know those types of scaffolds are good. They also provide scaffolding through narrations, animations, interactive media, and these all help to support young children who are developing. This is a screenshot from Bartleby's Book of Buttons. We haven't really talked about either of these titles, but it's one of the ones out there. This is actually a little game that's included in Bartleby. You have to get to the next page of the books in Bartleby's, in both the Bartleby titles, sometimes you have to solve little games or puzzles. And in this case, it's kind of cut off, but there's a little letter to Bartleby, and it gives the child some clues about where he needs to go next. And then you have to get him from his car through the path and navigate, not getting smashed by a train, and get to the Crab Island or wherever he's trying to go. And these, again, the reason that I like these particular types of scaffolds is because they directly correlate to what the story or what the narrative is about. So it aids in comprehension, although we haven't seen a lot of research that says conclusively that it does help in comprehension, but I haven't, but you would think that. Yeah, you know. The important part here is it relates to the story. The extras that they're adding in here relate to the narrative and help aid in comprehension. McKenna and some others have done some work with digital scaffolds, and they've found that scaffolds available in ebooks can assist beginning readers who are learning to decode text. So in this case, this is a screenshot from, I think, So What, the Three Little Pigs. There's a Show Me tab, and when you click on the Show Me tab, the different words that are underlined, you can click on those words and then get a pop-up picture. This relates directly with young kids. We often give them tests or measures of expressive and receptive vocabulary. So this kind of builds off that understanding. I'm not sure what the word is, but when it pops up, I see a picture, and then I can make that correlation, and I can help decode and understand what the text on this ebook is. This is very, very, this is important for young kids, and it's very empowering for a child to be able to touch on the word and either hear the word or see a visual representation of it, and it strengthens their schema.
What was this one?
That one's called Three Little Pigs from Choco Labs.
Choco Labs.
They change their name,
Okay.
and it's on your list. It's in your list.
If you click on mother, does a picture of my mother pop up, or just?
Well, it's augmented reality, so you have. Nah, I know.
Darren, what you whittling back there?
I'm just whittling.
Coffee stirrer?
This is the official whittling station, so I'm going to leave it here.
Here's I'm not going to go through this point by point, but when we look at digital features that are in ebooks very often, and then look at the research base that exists around children's literature, here are some of the features that we see and then how they relate to evidence-based instruction. So when we talk about alphabet knowledge, often adults will point to and name letters. Well, in ebooks, we see that computer offers letter or word pronunciation. So what I'm looking for is correlation between what good teachers have always done when they are teaching kids to read and what the computer or the ebook does to enhance that. You can see we go through print awareness. The computer reads and highlights text in some cases. It's very similar to me sitting in my chair in front of my big book and using my pointer to go along, and I'm pointing to each word as I'm reading aloud to the children that are participating in this shared reading. So we see some direct correlations between what you can do with ebooks interactive media and what we know works when we teach kids to read. I've got another slide even that goes a little further. It's comprehension. Computer defines words. Again, this is like what I just showed you the screen before. You can get a visual representation. Sometimes the computer offers animations that support the text. This would be the same as if I extended the reading and asked kids questions and help them enhance their understanding of the story. So there are a lot of great things that ebooks provide, and what I would hope is, as app developers, is that you would be looking at these types of research-based instruction techniques and figuring out and thinking about how does that fit into the app that you're making. And stick to the ones that research indicates help kids learn. And the ones that don't really help, that's what you throw out. Just my 2 cents.
So I think what I want you guys to take away from listening to Junko and Jeremy is evidence-based. Evidence does count for something, and research actually can really inform what works and what doesn't work. And when it does, it can be related to engagement, which is related to ROI. It all comes down to ROI, but these are like rungs on a ladder to help you get to where you want to be. And so
we're scaffolding you right now.
Yeah, exactly. exactly.
And that is the end of my lit review. So it was a really quick whirlwind. Like I said, the references are in the ebook, so please download it, share that with whoever you want to. It's on my blog, and I will be taking screenshots of how many hits and from what countries I get downloads from now.
Such a great idea.
To track. I do some of that stuff, and you can install little widgets in your WordPress blog that can track all that, so I'm glad I was on the right step. But I want to talk for a minute now specifically about a program I've been involved with called Akron Ready Steps and our use of ebooks. The URL for our NING is up there, but it's also linked on my blog. But Akron Ready Steps is a partnership. It's between the University of Akron. Let me get all of this through. I didn't realize I had this animated here, but it's a partnership between the University of Akron College of Education, which is where I work, and specifically in the Center for Literacy, Akron Summit Community Action, which is the Head Start agency in Summit County or in Akron where I live. So we have one agency that handles all of the Head Start facilities in our county. And also then Akron Public Schools, which is the school system that all of the Head Starts feed into for the most part. It's the largest school system. Our program was established in 2009 through an early reading first grant, and it's in its fourth and final year right now. We are looking for additional funding mechanisms to continue the program because we've done a lot of great work in there. But at this point in time, we're in our last federally funded year. The program itself served nearly 1,000 at-risk children in 5 Head Start sites in high-poverty communities in Akron. So we've worked with a lot of kids, and we've also worked with teachers as part of that. Our program goals in Akron Ready Steps There were four main goals. The first was to address high priority knowledge and skills preschoolers need to learn. So we, of course, our biggest focus was on student learning. Beside that, we also then focused on high priority knowledge and skills that teachers and teaching assistants need to teach. So there was a teacher learning component to our program as well. One of the more interesting components of the program was the design of high-quality 21st century language and literacy-rich environments. So we started with these Head Start classrooms that were very much, I don't know what the right word is, and I don't want to say that they were bad, but they were dated. You know, the facilities, they were lacking a vision for what learning in our future would look like, and they looked like what learning since 1960 looked like. So when we went and started working on the grant proposal, we looked at the facility and we knew that learning environments had to be a part of this program. And beyond that, in very important part, we wanted to engage our parents and mobilize our community around the need for strong preschool literacy education. And this was back in 2008 or 2009 when we were writing this grant, and it's been great to see that the emphasis on early childhood education with the current administration. And so we feel like we were on the right track back in 2008 when we said, hey, we need to make sure that there's an emphasis on our community in early childhood education. It's really important. And to get where we are now and be receiving some support from the feds is really nice to know that we were on the right path back then. When we began our ebook implementation, we started by posing this question. We wondered a lot of things, but we really wondered in regards to ebooks, what does a shared ebook experience look like in an early childhood classroom? And so that's where we started our thinking. This is what most of our classrooms look like. I mean, it's pretty standard. It probably looks familiar to all of you. Different centers, kids, you know, there's a small book area. But we started with these classrooms, and then we said, what's it look like if we bring ebooks in here? So we approached the question from a design perspective. We created a prototype model for the implementation of ebook pedagogy in the preschool classroom, and we set out to observe it. Our ebook model had four components. The first thing that we looked at was the ebook itself in terms of quality, design, and content. From there, we spent some time looking at the physical environment of ebook reading in the classroom. We then focused on engagement in ebook reading in small groups and individual children. And finally, the last phase, we focused specifically on explicit instruction using ebooks. We did this, we ran this design process several times. So we did it in year one. We found out what worked and what didn't work. We changed things and tried it again in a modified version in year two. And then from there, we actually expanded it from just Head Start classrooms to kindergarten through grade 2 classrooms. So we've been through the design process several times. Each time, finding out what works and what doesn't work, changing our design process a little bit, and then trying to make improvements that lead to greater child outcomes. Our real goal here was to kind of put this lens down on each of the components and develop tools that could help us look at this. Because when we started, we weren't sure how we were going to evaluate all of this. So we focused a lot on figuring out what types of tools and mechanisms will we use to collect data and to examine this. When we looked at ebooks, that first phase, we had a series of field studies that yielded a variety of observations, but we started actually with the ebook itself, and the first thing we looked at was the corpus of ebooks available for young children. This was again in 2009, so the amount of ebooks and the sources of ebooks were different in 2009 than where they are right now in 2013. But what we found in general is up on the screen now, and it's my ebook spectrum. We found that ebooks at that time ranged from digital storybooks or just flat digital representations of a regular book, all the way across the gamut to some that were just audio storybooks, some that were more like videos, and all the way to interactive storybooks. And there were very few interactive storybooks at that point in time, a lot more now. But in general, here's what we found. As interactivity in the ebook increased, the quantity available for teachers to use went down. And it was really just a mixed bag of what was available. We called it, it was a garden variety of ebooks that are available. That's changed a little bit since we first started looking at this. But I still think that this kind of gives you a good idea of what's out there in terms of curricular materials you can use with young kids in the ebook realm. From there, from just figuring out what do we have to use with kids, we went on to trying to figure out how would we determine good quality in an ebook. We drew on a professional knowledge base that was available, what we knew about good literature, about good books, and we developed a matrix to guide the design of this prototype tool that we use to evaluate the E dimension of an ebook. This matrix provided us a framework for organizing our ebook quality rating tool, which you see up here. And it specified criteria for judging the electronic environment. The tool itself consists of 3 main areas: ease of use, interaction, and multimedia. And if you're interested in viewing our tool, you certainly are welcome to do that, and there's a public link for the tool. It's just it's kind of a click through the public version. The version that we used for data collection purposes required specific questions to be answered and didn't let you just kind of click through, but the public version is there just so people can easily see what we were using. The mechanics, there are 76 data entry points in our quality rating tool amongst those 3 broad categories, and the mechanics are pretty simple. At that time, I just used a Google form, and you go to the Google form, fill out the survey, which was probably longer than most teachers really wanted to fill out, or anybody that was rating ebooks. And then everything gets stored into a spreadsheet in the back end, and we can bring that into SPSS or any kind of data analysis that we want to. So we did a lot of ebook quality rating, and we did inter-rater reliability and all the stuff that you would do, and I won't bore you with that. But at least we came out with some type of tool that we can use to try to help gauge whether ebooks are of high quality or not. And I'm still actually refining this tool as we speak. My goal is to get a concise enough tool eventually that teachers could use it to quickly check off what the criteria based on an ebook that they're selecting, and then get some kind of result back that says either this is good for instruction or not good. That type of development is easier said than done, however, so it's still a work in progress. Yeah.
Did you explore, and we talk about this a lot for Story, especially because it wasn't necessarily, it was created with the consumer market in mind, and then there's a shift in strategy to classroom use. Did you explore sort of the various instructional models for use of ebooks in classrooms? Whole group reading, whiteboard, whiteboard use, buddy reading, things like that?
Yeah, not specifically with the quality rating tool, but yes, as part of the research, one of the things I have been looking at are what are the different instructional models. So,
is there one that sort of came? I mean, my suspicion is for like the younger ones, and what we see with Story is it seems to be whiteboard project, the smartboard projection.
Yeah.
The older classes don't tend to use project the
Sure.
ebooks on when they get into the chapter. But did you find that? Was it mostly whiteboard use, or was it?
We saw a lot of whiteboard use.
Yeah.
That's actually phase 4, and we're only in phase 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I'm jumping the gun.
No, but we did find that teachers use different instructional techniques. One very common one was a shared reading on the whiteboard.
Right.
Teachers really like that, and I think it's because they're used to sharing books.
It's like a big book.
It's like a big book.
Yeah.
And so we approach that from a couple different perspectives. Like, is that really the transformational use of technology, or is it just a substitution? And is that really beneficial or not? So when we observe things like that, it just really raised more questions. But
like,
we
is
found,
that groundbreaking,
Yeah.
sort of like, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we found that teachers did a lot of things that they normally do. They would do read-alouds, they did shared book readings, they did choral readings using ebooks, they did readers theater. So I've seen all of that, and I have copious amounts of video of teachers and classes doing all that, and I'm doing coding and analysis of that as part of my dissertation right now.
Any learning centers or like
Yes.
learning centers? You saw that too?
I saw in one of the schools that I was in, I saw a really a pretty good integration of ebooks into part of they use traits writing, 6+1 traits writing, and their daily 5 format for facilitation, so they really deeply ingrain ebooks as part of that.
Sorry, I
Is that-
didn't
is
mean to
that
skip
answer
ahead.
your-
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, it did.
Okay.
It's just, it's all we talk about at work. Is literally,
Um,
it's all we talk. People are obsessed with that instructional model, so I just wanted to
Sure.
see you. Yeah.
What we learned is that what we learned from rating ebooks is that there's probably a pretty urgent need for validated evaluation tools that help parents and teachers choose quality ebooks with young kids. And I've written with my research team a couple different articles on this. The reason that I feel this way is because research-based tools can support a rigorous review process that doesn't only inform consumers but also builds a corpus of quality ebook literature for use with young children. And I think that that's important, that teachers have something that they can go to that they know is high quality and has been through a review process to help them make this instructional decisions. The second phase that I'll talk briefly about here is the physical environment. The reason I think that this is so important is because it's often overlooked. We often overlook the physical space of where reading occurs or e-reading occurs, and we really need to know more about how we can design rich physical environments that support kids' interactions with ebooks. Just giving them the tablet isn't enough. What type of other things do they need in their environment? So we focused on an architectural goal that would weave ebook browsing and reading into a well-designed physical learning space, and not isolate this way of reading from traditional book reading areas such as the book corner or the library center that most classrooms have. It was more bring the ebook in and let's make it part of what we're already doing. So this is one of our spaces, redesigned spaces. We call them our ebook nooks. So we worked with teachers on developing our nooks. And this is a touch screen, an Asus touchscreen PC. They would do shared ebook readings in a small space. You can see that we have the regular library is close in proximity to it. It's labeled so the kids know where the ebook nook is, and that sign is on a level where they can see it. It's cozy, and we try to make them cozy and comfortable. Now, it's easier to make things cozy and comfortable in districts and classrooms that have money to spend on physical environment, and it's challenging in classrooms and schools that don't. So we did the best we could with what we had available, but the ebook nook was a big takeaway from our program that we really liked. What we wanted to do was develop these learning spaces that afforded synchronous, asynchronous, formal, and informal learning opportunities in both physical and digital dimensions. Because when educators begin to blend all of these things together, physical, digital, learner, play, the overlap opens up these new areas for innovations that Hagel and Brown refer to as edges. And these edges are peripheral areas with high growth potential. So it goes kind of like this. Our edge that we were looking for started with our physical space. And then what we did was we added a new component around that, which was the digital space. That hadn't been in our classrooms prior to that. We always had a set of core skills that were being taught in that physical space, but then we brought new context to them when we added that digital dimension. And what this does is create a new edge, and that is where the area for opportunity and innovation occurs. When we blend those edges together, what we find is that we can move from a classroom approach to a learning spaces approach. And that's very much what we wanted to do, was move to learning spaces. And learning spaces give us that time to bring in formal and informal, synchronous and asynchronous learning to our kids. And then from there, even more edges will emerge, and we'll have learning that flows across time and space. And that was important to us. Learning doesn't happen when we're in the classroom, in rows, with four walls around us. It begins when the teacher says go, and it stops when the teacher says class dismissed. We wanted to move to an understanding that learning is something that is ongoing and forever, and it occurs in different spaces that can support that. What we found, our first area of innovation was the shared book reading and the ebook nook. Here's another
Jeremy, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
on that? Because we study that a lot. Have you read Mimi Ito's work on connected learning?
I have.
Yeah, because I think it would be interesting to apply that to early elementary.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm personally, it's a little off of the eBooks research I've been doing. I'm very interested in learning spaces. I've been working, have you heard of the Third Teacher?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working with some of the people from the Third Teacher and other really smart people that get the design and development of spaces. And I've also, familiar with people that are kind of like digital network learning type of experts. And I'm trying, eventually I'll get there to try to put all of that together.
I
So
think it makes sense focusing on space.
Yeah.
It's really important.
yeah, and like I
A
said,
lot of people forget about the environment.
right, and that's what we noticed, like when we went into the classrooms before we even wrote the grant. That's one thing that really stuck out was we need to give consideration to space because it possibly hasn't received enough. And that's not just the physical space, but also the digital space as well. So a big focus of working with our teachers was helping them understand the importance of space and how it relates to their actual classroom and instructional materials.
And then the name eBook Nook, it kind of makes it seem like you're zeroing in on ebooks. And
Yeah.
I was thinking if maybe eNook would be better, or I like actually Nookie.
Nookie? I like that too.
It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I would. My personal, my preference would be not to name it. Why, why label
Right.
it?
Yeah,
It's-
or just change the entire environment.
Yeah,
We
but
did we did a workshop with teachers where they had to go into their classroom and redo their whole entire physical space, so it didn't look like a traditional.
If Barnes and
classroom.
Noble could sponsor it, you could have.
That is where I was going.
It was almost the Kindle.
It all has to do with future funding, right?
No, a Nook.
The Nook. I would prefer not to have a label, but for sharing, for reporting, for publishing, people like it when you give names
You
and then you
name
can refer
something.
back to it. So
This is the riddle.
here it is. But really, what we found from the physical locations, or phase 2, is that when you create these nooks and niches, they become popular places that children will flock to at center time to enjoy and support literacy and their motivations and interests. So that's why we feel that the spaces are so important. If you design a well-intentioned space with all these considerations, kids will want to be there and want to use it, and they'll be motivated to read. So we had kids that might not ever go to the book shelf or the book corner, that when we brought the Nook in, all of a sudden that was their favorite place to be. And by paying attention to, like, is it properly lit? Is there sunlight coming in at certain times? But can you still read the screen? Those things made big differences in our spaces. I want to move on and talk about engagement because we did examine the impact of different instructional formats like shared book, reading, book browsing, and also different devices. So we specifically looked at touch screens and mobiles, and then we focused on the children's engagement with these different areas. The results that we got back from our engagement studies show that the type of device used for e-reading has an impact on several multisensory behaviors that contribute to children's engagement. So device matters to kids. In general, mobiles appear to afford more looking and touching, but less moving and gesturing than the touch screen, which might be expected, given that ebook reading at the touch screen we observed was most often adult-led. So when we used whiteboards, interactive whiteboards, and did shared readings, that was often teacher-driven, versus when we gave them the iPod Touches or iPads, that was child-driven. And so those were the big takeaways. Kids ultimately seemed to be more engaged when they had the device in their hand and they were looking and touching, as opposed to sitting in a large group or even in a small group and focusing on a teacher-led activity. Then you had them up and they're over here,
Yeah.
and then teachers redirecting, and so it makes sense, but that's what we found.
So Jeremy, I called Smart Technologies just
How'd that
out
go?
of the blue, as if I was a consumer, and I asked, I said I'm a small school in New Jersey and I'd like to order a smart board, and I said how much would it cost, and I got this huge. They couldn't tell me.
They're giving them away for free now.
Well, not when I called.
Oh.
So I said, I just want one smart, I got one classroom, I got an electrical outlet, and, so it came down, after all this stuff, that I could get it down to like $2,400,
Wow.
which, if I supplied the projector.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't count the bulb and all that.
So a screen.
So essentially, but anyway, and that was with installation, they have, and some training. So I took that number and I divided it by 180, which was at the time the number of iPod Touch 4s I could get at
Right.
Walmart.
Right.
Because they had dual cameras and had access to 30,000 apps.
Right.
So it's a pedagogical decision. You want one teacher standing at the front, or do you want 16 devices
Yeah.
that are all loaded up with apps?
Yeah.
That,
And I get it when it comes to device. I get asked that a lot. Like, what device should we buy? And what I tell people most often is, don't focus on device, focus on learning. But beyond that, you need to understand what is your objective? What's your vision for learning for your kids? That's the important decision, not whether you're going to go with iPad or Nook or Kindle. So once we get beyond that and we know that there's a good reason for bringing the devices in, what I recommend to them is to have a blend of devices. Because what we want to develop in our children, even at the early age, is this core set of skills that will make them successful no matter what they're presented with. Because we don't know what devices will be there in the future. But we know we want them to understand how to access web-based resources. We know we want them to be able to communicate with voice over IP or whatever. We know we want them to be able to search and find relevant resources in some type of iTunes store or Amazon store. So you need to focus on building this core set of, for lack of a better term, new literacies or whatever, digital skills or whatever we're going to call them in your kids. And if that's not your focus, if you're just focused on, can I bring 300 of these into my school, then you're talking about the wrong thing. And once we get past that, and I make them really upset and they yell at me for how dare I suggest things like that. Once we get past that, what I tell them is there's a good time to have one of these, but there's also a good time to have one of these. So by offering a blend of devices in your school or in your classroom, you can then empower children to say, you choose what's best for to meet your learning needs today, and then take that device and run with it. I will say from observation, I've also noticed that with really young kids, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, the iPod Touch just fits in their hand, and you feel that they are holding it safely and securely, and you're not worrying about breaking it. If you've ever seen a 3-year-old try to hold this up and use the video camera, you're like, whoa, let's be a little more, safe with that. But if they have this with one hand and they can still do video, it seems to work a lot more easily for them. So you kind of got to consider a lot of things when you're talking about device.
That's what Chris Kroll has found, a kindergarten teacher, that given the choice, if you lay them on a table, that a lot of times kindergartners would go for the smaller, the touch.
And you can do so much with the iPod
Yeah,
Touch
mini.
for the price point.
Yeah, the mini's good.
The minis changed the game a little bit.
So I've tried to create the ultimate device, the most power in the right format, and that's the mini with that big grips. It's the blue case right there, because that has the size. Because when you go down to that small size, fonts on eBooks are
That's what I was about
really
to talk about. That's what
problematic.
happens.
Yeah.
When things get
Yeah.
small and touch areas get small,
Yep.
and you end up either having to cut out interactivity
Yeah.
so that you have the touch space. We
But the
hear from
mini
parents
gives-
that don't like it because it's like
Yeah,
right
but
here with
Yeah.
the kids.
The mini gives you the
So-
iPad, all the things iPad does. I'm just hoping that they'll come out with a mini that is the next generation mini. I think would be more interesting. But
Well, and it'll
it's
be
a great product.
the mini and the Kindle Fire HD, I think, are about that size. Where that
Yes.
it's kind of it's the blend of these two sizes, and hopefully the price point will get somewhere that is really affordable for a lot of people. But there are a lot of considerations around device, and those are the most frequent questions I get. Everyone just goes straight to device, and You know, I like to try to roll it back a little bit and have them think a little bit more and make sure that they're at least thinking about where I think they should be, and if not, I don't talk to them. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you test it at all with touchscreen, like PC size
Yes.
regular computers
Yes.
as well, not just Promethean or Smartboard
Yes,
feature?
we
but where
did.
the kids were actually doing this.
Yes, and I'll show you here
Okay.
a little bit.
Sorry.
Let's talk about
That's
instruction.
Not trying to jump
Yeah.
the gun
No, that's
again.
fine.
And
Okay, that's phase 4.
See?
But we
You
did,
two, back
we
up.
did, we gathered descriptive information about the use of ebooks in the shared book reading routine. So something our preschool teachers were very familiar with was shared book reading.
Yeah.
It looks like this a lot, right? Big book, rocker, nice rug. So that was what we identified as our edge. Remember, we were looking for areas of innovation, and we knew teachers were comfortable with that, and we thought that there would be a good translation or an easy transition to shared ebook reading as well. So our observations focused on the implementation of shared book reading with small groups of kids, and that these were at the touch screen. So they weren't actually at the interactive whiteboards, but more often they were at these touchscreen PCs that we brought in, the all-in-one units. We purchased the ASUS model. They were like, I want to say $450 to $500 to bring in one of those touchscreen PCs. And what we really focused on was an emphasis on learning target words followed by independent reading of ebooks on the mobile devices. So we looked specifically for ebooks that could be read on a touchscreen device or a PC, but also then had the exact same title or a version that were on the mobile app. Because what we know about how kids learn is that you want to introduce, or what we know about teaching is that you're going to introduce the book in a shared setting very often, and then you're going to follow it by multiple rereadings, either in small groups or partners with kids, or independently. It was very difficult to find titles that went available through a browser and then also available as an app.
Well, that's almost twice the design and development, right?
Well, you know, I'm not about Roy, I'm a
necessarily,
teacher.
though. Not necessarily though, because we do it and then we port it over. Once we built that engine.
It will help us get there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But-
I mean,
That's the only thing.
But that was, I
Testing
think,
on
ours
all
are.
those platforms is
And
really
then
hard.
testing it on
Yeah.
all those platforms.
All those that is really tough.
yeah.
You should put, all of design developers in those major grants. That's what they tell us.
We should.
to.
Yeah, that's
We
what.
should.
Then you get it on all those platforms for learning.
Yeah, that's
bigger
good. That's a good
partnerships.
point.
Yep.
What we found when we looked at instruction was that it was a relatively easy transition from print book to ebook shared reading to support kids' word learning. So teachers didn't have too much of a problem making the transition, which I think was good for us. We also found that teachers applied or readily applied very familiar before, during, and after reading framework. BDA is what we would call it, on their shared book routine, and employed evidence-based instructional techniques like making predictions, asking kids what they knew, following up with questions afterwards. And this is an example of a set of instructional resources that teachers even developed to go along with the shared book reading. So you can see that they had a reading plan. They talked about what they were going to do before, during, and after reading. They focused on specific vocabulary words, and then they even made these vocabulary cards to use during the shared ebook reading, and very similar to what they would do with a regular shared book reading. So teachers kind of knew what to do when we say, hey, we're going to do shared book reading, but we're going to do it with touchscreen or with a mobile. Applying the known to the new during e-reading was often used to a fault, however. So teachers didn't always capitalize on the robust features that ebooks provide to enlarge, enrich, or expand the literacy experience. All right, so they stuck to what they knew and what they had always done with books, and they didn't take a lot of chances. Because what I found is that teachers, they really like to be right. And they don't like to fail. They've been good in school, they're good at doing school, and they always want to do that. So there wasn't as much experimentation or as much trying new things as we had hoped. For example, print highlights were not always pointed out. Dictionary hotspots were only kind of explored just very little. Links between the picture and print were often overlooked. And the handover of touching, tapping, and swiping and other interactivities at the IWBs, at the whiteboards, or at the touchscreen was very limited. So teachers controlled that ebook reading quite a lot, instead of letting kids get up and be the ones to point and tap and swipe across the page. So we found that, and when I go back and I watch my video of my teachers, I'm very often shocked at the language that they use with kids and the controlling and not manipulation, it's not the right, but it's surprise, sorry.
Oh, that makes me so upset.
I know, and these are, I'm not saying that these are bad teachers, these are good
Yeah, I
teachers
know.
for the most part, but that's just, you know, that's what.
When you were just observing, you didn't do any type of like, hey, you want to try this or anything like that?
No.
It was actually, I would set up the videotape and I would leave, because they, you know,
Yeah.
and then I would come back and turn the video off and I've got in.
So
If they
not
used an
hard.
interactive whiteboard, did they use it interactively or did they just use it as projector space?
Projector,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, that's the.
Sometimes they would touch it to turn the page. Sometimes they would just do it right from the
Yeah,
computer.
they don't use them. They use
I've
them
got a
like
whole,
like a
I got a whole
chalkboard.
IWB
We-
thing.
we
I
did-
we
gotta get in
We did
there.
training.
That's your
We did
next grant,
training.
is
Them to do.
participatory models
Use
for
the-
professional
I've got to get the
development.
PhD done first,
Get
right?
those teachers to be hard.
Can I just get my PhD done first? I'm almost done. So let me get through. On the whole, we've got a really small but growing body of lab-based and field research that suggests that these key characteristics of ebooks, like visuals, sound effects, narration, animation, print highlights, music, embedded tutors or activities, don't appear to interfere with emerging literacy skills, which I think is good. It's
But
good
they
to
don't
know
interfere
that.
because they're not using them.
Exactly. And in fact, they might actually be promoting essential skill development for some kids, especially those who benefit from enriched reading environments. However, we really need to know a lot more about how the new and alluring features of ebooks become well-aligned, well-timed, and well-placed, and aesthetically well-constructed to produce substantive, intelligent, and instructive e-texts for kids. We just need to know more. And so I will continue along this line of research for that reason. We really want, and my focus in the future will be to define, describe, and examine transitioning instructional techniques to the media-rich ebook environment and to generate new ones that maximize its potential. So based on all this, I feel like that's where I'll be going, is trying to figure out why teachers don't use the features that are there, how can we help them learn to use those and feel comfortable, and then not so much focus on what can we do with books that we can do with ebooks, but find new instructional techniques that only ebooks afford as opposed to traditional books. That, in a nutshell, is what I have to share with you today. I'm happy to take questions, and then I also have a couple demos I can share with you.
Have you ever looked at length of text?
No,
Because
not until I saw your text demands thing the other night.
oh
I'm like,
no, because I think that, and this is just pure projection from being in the classroom. The teachers are under pressure to finish things,
yeah,
and so there's been some discussion as to whether or not even shorter text, but more focused text, actually serves better in the classroom. Because there's this rush to get through it. I have to finish the book before the end of the period, before the 45 minutes. Whereas an adult, we never finish books. How many times do you sit down and actually finish a book?
right.
But yet in
Yeah.
school, we push to get it done by 45 minutes. And I would kind of hazard to guess that's some of why they don't do these other features and why they don't do the interactive
Yeah.
part. Because it's time consuming.
You know, it's Common Core too. The Common Core calls for short reads, the short
Yeah.
content-rich feed. But we get that all the time with Story, and it's a lot of it is a device limitation. You know, they only have 2 iPads per classroom. There are very few classrooms that have, that are fully outfitted. And the
Right.
kids get the iPad. For the kids who are reading chapter books, there's no way,
No way.
during that 20 minutes they can
Right.
finish a chapter book. Then they don't get that iPad for another week or 2
Right.
weeks. It's very frustrating.
So we just to add to this, we did it more for middle and high school students, but I think it could apply to the younger generation. We just released a book called Reading in a Participatory Culture and a digital book called Flows of Reading, and it was specifically about reading discontinuously, reading non-linearly, focusing on one page and doing a close reading. So that's some new area of research.
I think that's great. Because
Totally.
Aaron, what's it called again? I'm sorry.
Reading in a Participatory Culture came out with Teachers College Press, and then I did a digital book called Flows of Reading. It has about 250 videos inside it, all about close reading and reading.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to jump in too, but I have to say I found it fascinating what you were talking about, where physically ebooks do fit in the classrooms. Because I always wonder how physically are they going to work, because when I go in on school visits, it is, normally there's not a designated area, or it's like a treat zone.
Yeah.
Like where teachers allow, because they have such limited iPads, that it's a treat or a reward for a kid that's been good.
Yeah.
And they get to go do it, and then the other kids don't get to do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the kid is over in that treat zone on his own, or her own usually. So, I mean, as a developer of these things, I've often been, you know, teachers' guides are great and all that different things, but it seems like it almost has to run on autopilot, a lot of the ebooks that we're doing, because the kid has to be able to do them themselves.
Well, what I understand what you're saying, and I think that in some regards, for some kids, it might need to run on its own. But I think that's where options come in, and we've talked about this throughout the time. As a teacher, I'm looking for apps that give me options where I can choose and maybe actually have something set up, because I know who's going to go to the treat zone or whatever you want to call it, or who's going to use that. And then I know based on my learner's needs, I need to toggle this on or off. And then when the child goes there, they have the support that they need. And it's different for every kid, and that's what makes it so tricky to develop generically for every child. Because what we know developmentally is that every kid is different, and every kid progresses, you know, at a different pace. So I think that having options to turn print highlights on or off, to turn narration on or off, you know, are good things when you're developing your books, and are things that can help even good readers. Normally, what we try to do to deflect the good kid gets the iPad, or you finished your work early, and I have to help everyone else. We worked with our teachers in putting the ebook and the book library as part of their center rotation, and then when kids would come up to pick what center they were going to, we used these. They had this little bracelet system where if they wore the red bead bracelet, then they went to the water station, and if they wore the blue bead, then they went to dramatic play, and all of that. And one of the opportunities was to use the ebook nook or the book corner, and then that helped to spread the wealth a little bit. So even the kids that wouldn't normally be the good kids or weren't getting done, at least had an opportunity to choose that as their center destination for a day or multiple days across the school year. And the kids became very proficient, you know, at watching and seeing if there was a child that decided they wanted to switch their center and a red bracelet became available. They would go over and get the red bracelet, and then they would go to the iPads. What we also found through that, though, is kids home it a lot. So when you give them the device and you're not kind of instructing them what to do, they're just from one thing to another, and they're going through. And you know what else they like to do? They like to take pictures of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I got a bazillion pictures of close-ups of nostrils and barrettes and all kinds of cute stuff. But so that leads me to something that I did want to share. Beyond the ebook,
It's what like Junko said about how do we, she pointed out one of her favorite ones was with a camera.
Yeah.
So how do we start incorporating the camera more into the storytelling,
right,
so kids can actually author and reflect through that?
So let me show you a couple things that I've been doing with preschool and with my own kids. I've been not looking so much at buying commercially available ebooks, but how can teachers create their own resources and ebooks? So I have a site, I can give you guys the address before I go, but I look at two different types: free ebook creation tools and pay ebook. So in my free folder I have these different apps. My favorite is Story Creator. So the Story Creator app, I like Little Story Maker up there a lot.
Story Kit was one of the first.
Story Kit was one of the first. Yeah. But in Story Creator, when you open it up, you can make your own books, and you can use your own pictures and illustrations. This is one I actually made with my son. It's called Buckeyes Cheer.
Buckeyes Cheer.
So you see the features in here that I talked about. Print highlights.
H. I.
Yeah.
Free.
O. Buckeyes are number one. Go Bucks. The end. 5.
So
Story
taking
creator.
pictures using that camera feature of the iPod or the iPad, recording his own audio, and then then Story Creator allows you to go in and put in the text and then sync up the audio with the print highlights. So these are the scaffolds that we were talking about exist in ebooks that are helpful, that teachers or kids can now begin to use on their own with iPad creation tools like Story Creator. And of course we like to have silly photo booth photos in there and all kinds of stuff. But that is just one example. I've also worked a little bit with a set I call my free app arsenal. There's all kinds of things that aren't ebooks or reading tools, but they're like photo apps. So I have a whole bunch of them, not a whole bunch, but Pick Stitch is a free one, Pick Frame. These allow you to bring in multiple pictures and sequence them and put different frames around them. You can save them to your camera roll and then get them back into your EPUB. So developing a toolkit, and these are the type of skills that I'm talking about are essential in developing in our kids. It doesn't matter what the app is or what the platform is, it's do we know how to use these tools, either as teachers or as learners, as students, that I feel are really important. When we look at pay, here's a couple pay. Book Creator is probably my favorite. It's like $3.99 or $4.99. My Story is another really good one.
What was it called?
Book Creator.
Book Creator.
The easiest one is probably eBook Creator, is what this one's called. And this is
I'm sorry, which one was your favorite?
Book Creator.
Oh, and what was the one just before that you were talking about?
Here, I'll go back.
You should take screenshots.
My Story, that's one
I will send you guys a link. I have a Google site I made called You Make eBooks, and it has all these linked up with links to the iTunes store and everything.
That would be great.
Have you tried anything like Demi Book Composer?
Yeah, I've got Demi Book Composer.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, it's okay. It's not my favorite, but it's an option, and they have a free. They used to have a
They have a
free
free
and a paid
one
version.
and then a paid version.
My Story's a good one. Pictello's a little more expensive. This is more. I've got onto this one essentially as an assistive technology resource, but this is an example. We can have it play right through. This is about
Grandpa's house.
So you can use text to speech, or you can record your own.
It's Grandpa's house.
That's a castle, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. My dad was had Parkinson's disease and was in a home, a living facility, and my son couldn't have him come to school for Grandparents' Day, so we made this book for him to share with his class.
The elevator goes up and down.
Listen to the voice.
All right, up and down.
I invite the quilt.
Oh my gosh, adorable. How do you eat them?
Here's the dining room. I love my grandpa.
Aww.
I know, it just gets you, doesn't it? I get choked up every time.
You got an awe on that one.
So I always carry, in my iPad case, I carry along with me storyboards. So when I'm traveling with my kids, if they ever have ideas, then they can storyboard it out. So even starting at 4 years old, my 4-year-old knows that to start with writing our own book, we're going to start with a storyboard. And he will draw his little pictures, and now that he's in kindergarten, he'll attempt to write the words down below, and then we take it from the storyboard and then we put it into one of the different apps. And I'm always asking him to try new apps and everything. So, sometimes what we will even do is just take some of his favorite books. So here's one of Leveled Reader. That's from Scholastic.
course.
Sorry.
That's on
You're
Story.
going to be so mad at me when I show you this, but I'm going to show you anyways. Here's what I do. He loves this book, Meet Han Solo. It is a long E sound. It's got, a limited amount of text. He loves Star Wars. So what we'll do with it is we'll take it and put it into something like, I have to remember where that one's at. I think it could be in My Story. Come on. Meet Han Solo. So we'll make ebooks of traditional books, and then we can read that, hopefully. Doesn't like me. And it's frozen. But we'll take pictures of this, and then he'll read the text. And what I tell teachers a lot is this is a great way for you to have kind of informal assessments, so you can see, oh, here's the page, so go back and see if it'll let me read now. You can share these with parents, and you can have great evidence of what the child either can or can't do, and also you can do it at different time periods throughout the year, and you can see growth in students by something like this. Publishers don't like it because, and librarians hate it when I share this because I'm violating copyright or something.
Fair use, fair use.
Fair use.
I was
Like
just
fair
gonna,
use.
It's
you're
the
not
kid
selling
that's
it.
doing
I'm
it.
an
I'm
intellectual
not
property lawyer, and this wouldn't
That's
bother
fair
me
use.
because as long as you're not selling it or something.
Yeah, no, totally.
One
And as long as the kid is cute.
and blue.
Yeah.
It's for educational purposes.
But imagine the power of this at a parent-teacher conference when I'm talking to them about the child's fluency, for example.
Yeah.
The judge would say, "Oh."
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my kids do this with the grapes.
So-
grapes of wrath.
I've got plenty more, and I'm sure I'm out of time. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I will share the You Make eBooks site. So if you're interested in teacher or student-created ebooks, you can have that.
Well, Jeremy, you're giving PhDs a good name.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.